All right, lads, welcome back to another episode of Who's Got the Ball. This time we are on our 20th episode, so a bit of a milestone there. Thanks to all of you who've listened so far. We usually give a shout at the end about giving us a follow or subscribing and stuff like that. So just gonna shout it out at the start this time. If you could subscribe on whatever podcast platform, leave a review, subscribe on YouTube. It'd be greatly appreciated. We're trying to get those numbers up and give us a follow on social media. But yeah, myself and Shane here again as usual. How are you, Shane?
Grant, we're another week closer to Christmas now, so nothing to complain
Jesus,
about, really.
it's not about Christmas. Like it's not even summer yet
Yeah, we'll,
officially.
we'll we'll get over the summer and get to Christmas.
Oh Lord, hey, big Christmas man. So
I'm more a big fan of the sports that happen around Christmas. Everything just seems to all come together at once very nicely. There's about 40 Premier League games over the space of 2 days and everything, so it's the
yeah,
best time of year for the sports, really. Christmas Day, NFL and NBA as well. So
yeah, that's true.
Christmas is the best time for sports.
Yeah, that is true. All around December, I think is probably the best.
Yeah,
That's not a bad shout, but I think we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves here. We have to get through the rest of the
the
summer
transfer window.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the sports now that we're covering, there's kind of only one big game left, which we'll touch on in the football. NFL is obviously not coming back till September, and then the NBA is getting towards the biggest part of the season. The NBA finals will be starting next week, so that's huge, and then that'll be done as well. So there'll be a lot of different moving parts over the summer, and we'll keep you up to date on transactions, draft information in the NBA, transfers in the Premier League, everything that's going on. But today we're gonna jump into the Champions League final, and we're gonna give a bit of a preview. So yeah, I think it's funny one this year because like although they're two massive teams, I think most people are always used to either like getting watching it when like an English team is in it or either Barcelona or Real Madrid. They're always like the biggest market teams. So it's nice, I think, for a change to have this. I liked I think it was 2008 the year or maybe no that was it was 2010 was the year I think that Inter beat Bayern Munich in the final.
Yeah.
That was really, yeah, that was good. Like to have two teams. I feel like it's a similar experience to that, but maybe a bit more excitement around this one. So, what are you most looking forward to in this game?
I'm looking forward to watching the two. Two completely different styles, and like
Yeah,
Inter are kind of the blueprint for how teams should play a back three.
yeah,
Watching their back three come up against Kvaratskhelia, Barcola, Doué, Dembele, that's the kind of battle I'm really looking forward to. Seeing what PSG's forward players can do against that back three of Inter, and see if Dumfries has the ability to kind of sit in as a natural right back for parts of that game, because they are going to have to suffer for a lot of that game, I feel, and I think they'll need him more at the back than they will going forward in this game.
yeah,
I was looking at the odds. The draw was 12-5, and I think that might be a great price for a draw after 90 minutes at 12-5. I
yeah.
think it's going to be a very intriguing game of football.
I think there's gonna be a lot to look at. For me, like I noted the fact of having two different styles, but then I also noted that both teams have very attacking inclined fullbacks. I suppose for Inter it's like a wing backs, more so wing backs, like you mentioned with the three at the back, and sometimes Demarco will sit in if Dumfries bombs forward, which he tends to do. But I think that's a really interesting one because Nuno Mendes and Hakimi both like to get forward as well on the PSG side. So will that be something that either team tries to exploit the other when there's someone out of shape? I feel like it's more likely that Inter will try to do that because I think PSG, I think Inter are kind of more well drilled, and I don't think PSG will be able to exploit that kind of movement because I think, as you said, the way that they do it with three in the back, they kind of move into a four at the back situation when
Yeah.
them. But I think PSG leave themselves way too open at times, and we saw what Inter can do on the counter attack. So I think that's going to play a massive part in this because like they're such a good counter attacking team. I think we're going to see like a lot of goals, to be honest.
I don't know, but I think the opposite. I think this has kind of a 1-0 or a 2-1 written all over it for me. I think
Okay.
because of how solid Inter are defensively, I think
Mm.
they will limit PSG to far less chances than they had against Liverpool and they had against Arsenal. I think this Inter team is really well set up to play against a team like this PSG team, where
Yeah.
even if they do, even if Hakimi and Nuno Mendes do bomb on, they're still coming up against the two wing backs before they get near the three centre backs. And I
Yeah.
think they're going to find it a lot harder to find space out there because they could almost they could have Dumfries and the right centre back pushing out as a kind of the other way we had the wide centre backs at Sheffield United. I know it's a mad comparison, but if you have two pushing on the right and the left side at all times, it makes it a lot harder. Now I
Yeah.
know it leaves the gaps in the middle, but that's where their two centre mids will really have to kind of drop in. They'll have to work hard. Barella
Yeah.
and whoever plays beside him, either Çalhanoğlu or Mkhitaryan, whoever's in there beside him is
Yeah.
going to have a tough job. But I think it's the complete opposite to the Europa League final, where we said that that was the battle of who's not as bad as the other one. This really is a battle of two very very good football teams, and I think the contrasting style is going to make it. It's going to really be telling. It's going to be a really interesting game.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said because that was kind of similar to my point that I think that there won't be much to exploit there on Inter's side. I don't think PSG will be able to exploit them because they're so well drilled, whereas I think Inter will exploit PSG, but that's why I think there'll be goals because I think they'll exploit them on the counter attack and PSG will have to put like everything into going forward. Kind of a similar thing to what we saw in the Barca Inter game. If it was anything similar to either of those, it would be unbelievable.
Mm,
But just looking at some of the recent form, like Inter finished second in Serie A, 1 point behind Napoli. Obviously, they won on the last day, but like the big one was dropping. They drew with Lazio on the
that's oh
second
yeah.
last game, and that was because of a 90th minute goal for Lazio. And then in the Italian Cup, they got hammered by AC Milan 3-0, who haven't been great this season. So, kind of domestically, they've been way off it in the last few weeks after being great at the start of the season. And then looking at PSG, they just cruised throughout this season. They won the Ligue 1 by 19 points.
Yeah.
And like they won the French Cup against Rennes, so that was against John Patrick, the Irishman. I think he played for half of that game, but or maybe a bit less. But they won that handily enough. They were 3-0 up at halftime, ended up winning 3-0. And then in the Champions League, they've been good too. So it's a little bit different in terms of like Inter haven't had all the happiness in the world during their towards the end of their domestic season, but I think they might actually use that to like fuel them into this
Mm.
game. Who do you think is going to win? I'll throw it to you to give a first prediction.
I think PSG are going to do it. I think they've been playing the best football in Europe all season. I think Arne Slot is kind of molding his next team based on what PSG have been doing with the two attacking fullbacks and people sitting in. I think what Enrique has done there this year has been incredible. The form
Yeah,
he's gotten out of Dembele, Doué, bringing him in and making him a winger. He was a centre mid when he was playing at Rennes. Now he's a winger and he's lightning.
yeah,
I think PSG will have just a small bit too much rent. As I said, it'll be a 1-0 or 2-1. I don't think either team is going to run away with it. And I think PSG 2-1
okay, okay. I'm going
Inter.
the opposite way. I'm going with Inter. I just think PSG's openness is going to cost them, and the fact that Inter have made it there like a couple of years ago and lost to City, in a game that they really should have won given some of the chances they had, and then having kind of lost towards the end of this season domestically, I think they're really going to use all of that as fuel and kind of know how to get over the line because obviously you could say that they haven't got it done in the last couple of attempts, but I think they'll use that to their advantage, and I think PSG will be back definitely with Enrique. I think I could see them winning it in the next couple of years, but I just think Inter are gonna have it on the night, and I'm going with 3-2 to Inter because I think there'll be a good
Ooh.
few goals.
I think another big thing is that Inzaghi is leaving after this match as well. He's going to Saudi. And I
Yeah,
always
so
wonder if that's a blessing or a curse for the team that's losing the manager. Is it kind of like, let's give him one big, massive send off and win this cup? Or is it, oh, we don't have to listen to him anymore after this game. Let's just go out and do our own thing. Now, I don't think it will be the second one, but
no,
you also wouldn't be surprised if they kind of, not down tools so much, but if they put in 5% less effort than they've been putting in all year. And 5% in Champions League final could be massive. If you've even three people playing at 5% to the level, then it could be a massive, massive telling difference, I think. So
yeah,
we'll
that's
have
a
to see
fair
how that
point.
works out as well.
Yeah, because that could go either way, as you said. But I think I think they had kind of a good relationship, like the players and the club in general, like with him and the way he played over the years. Or the way he had the team playing over the years that he's been there.
Yeah,
So I could see them doing it for him, but as you said, it's really hard to know, like if that could play into your mind if you go 1-0 down or 2-0 down. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the big one in the football now. Before we get into a couple of international games over the next few weeks, friendlies and things like that, and obviously the transfer window, we're gonna, since Gan Seans has finished up, we're gonna cover some transfers from now on instead of that, but we'll do that after the NBA. So let's jump into our NBA topic, and what else could it be other than the Oklahoma City Thunder? Unbelievable! Like, how impressed were you with them?
they're insane. They're just so good to watch, start to finish. Everything they do has a purpose. Everything they go with has a purpose, and even the game that the Timberwolves picked up, they tried something different. They tried blocking Shea getting out to the wings. That worked for them. They blew out the OKC, and then the next two games, the OKC just said, "Okay, they've tried that. Let's counteract that by doing this." And they just came back and just destroyed them again. And there's so much to like about them. Everything they do, their depth is incredible. The players, the way they shoot is incredible. SGA is quite clearly incredible. Like I just think they're a hell of a team. We've been saying all year that they're the best team in basketball, and not once have they gone out there and said, "Oh, let's show the two boys they're wrong," like every other team seems to do. They've actually just kept going and they've just stayed being good.
Yeah, no, I think one of the best teams I've watched across a full season.
Mm.
It's very hard to compare. Like, just looking at this stat here, they have the fourth most wins before the NBA Finals, which includes regular season and playoffs of any team ever. Like, so they had 79 wins across the regular season and the playoffs. The only teams ahead of them were the 15-16 Warriors, the 95-96 Bulls, and the 96-97 Bulls. So that's the kind of, that's the kind of
The level
people
they're
you're
at.
in there with. And looking at another record that they've broken was they've had the most double digit wins in NBA history for a full season and playoff runs with 61. So the
Wow.
2017 Warriors, again, that was the next season. They had 60 of those after their other incredible season before that. So, look, just pointing to how amazing this team has been and how the way that they've played is just not normal. And for me, I think a lot of it comes from how good their defense is, because their offense gets a lot of props, like, because SGA is just been out of this world. And for me, Jalen Williams has also kind of proven how he can be the number two option moving forward without any doubt. I think there was a bit of doubt before this playoffs, and he did have some blips, but to come back from some of the games he had against the Nuggets, where there was a stretch there where he had 10 points, 18 points, and 6 points, and then to follow that up, he had 24 points in the closeout against the Nuggets in a game that they needed to win in a game 7. Then coming into this series, his first time in the conference finals, and winning, scoring 22.2 points across each game, over 6 rebounds, over 4 assists. That stands out to me so much for them. But to get back to the defensive point, I think how well that they can just shut teams down. Like you said,
Mm.
the Wolves did something to them that day when they won that game. And I think the Thunder kind of recognized that they were making a lot of mistakes and they didn't play as many minutes for some of their main guys because I think they kind of felt like, okay, this is one we can throw away and we'll come
Yeah.
back. We'll win it out at home if we get the next one. And then their defense just completely locked in the last 2 games. The reason they won by so much, so many times, is because their defense just stops the other team. They turned the ball over so many times. Alex Caruso is a menace. Dort was amazing in that last game to close out, and even their stars like J Dub and Chet, with how many blocks he had. The list goes on and on. They're just unbelievable defensively.
They're just like every single player has a role and they all play it perfectly. Like there's some teams where every team has a sorry, where some teams where every player has a role. For like take the Rocks for example. Like Dylan Brooks is meant to go out there and shoot trees. He doesn't do it. He just gets himself technical fouls instead. There's no one on the OKC that goes out there with an individual kind of mindset. Even SGA goes out there with the team in mind. They all go out, they all play for each other, and that's something that I think it's really hard to instill, and it's very easy to break. It only takes one person to go off the rails in one game, and everything kind of just fall out the window. But it's the way they played all season. As you said, 79 wins and 61 of those double digits. That's insane. Like that's absolutely
Yeah,
incredible. And they built this success for themselves. Like they've all come up together over the last couple of years, losing in the conference finals last year or the
semis
NBA
last year.
finals, the semifinals last year, and they've come back this year just like a
Yeah,
group of men possessed, and they've
yeah,
looked unstoppable from game one.
yeah. And everybody doubted them as well as another big thing.
Yeah.
Like they thought that maybe because they're so young they wouldn't be able to do it, and that was a point that I kind of said I don't agree with that because they have some guys who really know how to get things done. Like they brought in Caruso for a reason. He's a winner in the playoffs. He knows what to do in big games. He's a great defender. And then Hartenstein was great in the playoffs last year. They managed to bring him in, which is something maybe down the line they won't be able to do. They won't have the luxury of bringing a guy like him in because they'll have to pay Chad and J-Dub a lot more money. But they knew what the gaps were from last year. They filled them, and then the guys were a year removed from, something that really hurt them losing to the Mavs last year. They just couldn't seem to figure them out. And now
Mhm.
this time they came up against an excellent defensive team in the Timberwolves, and they figured out exactly what they needed to do. And I just think all props to them. They showed everybody what they're made of, and I don't think there's any reason to doubt that they will win the whole thing now at this point. They just seem to be by far the best team,
Mhm.
in the entire thing. With someone like SGA in his first ever conference finals, just after picking up the MVP trophy, he averages 31 points in his first ever conference finals. And one of those games was he only played 28 minutes because they were getting
Yeah,
blown out. So, like
it's
over 30
ridiculous.
points in every other game. Like that's just not normal. And like, do you think now it's kind of inevitable at this point that they'll win it?
Surely, unless something wild happens, I can't obviously we're I think we're safe enough to say that the Pacers are probably going to join them by the time this podcast is out tomorrow. I think
Yeah,
they'll
it
win
seems like
tonight.
it's going that way.
Yeah, and I just don't see how the Pacers can do any more to them than the Timberwolves managed to do, which was very, very little. I just can't see it happening. I think unless they lose someone to injury or something like that, there's no way that they don't see it out now, and it will be another 4-1 or 4-2. I don't think it will be too difficult for them either.
Yeah, I could kind of see that as well. I think if I was to say it now, I'd say the Thunder and five over the Pacers in the
Yeah.
finals. But obviously next week when we know for sure the matchup, we'll get a bit more into that and we'll give the Pacers some time because they deserve it for what they've been
Yeah,
doing. But
absolutely.
right now we just got our conference finals winners last night in the Thunder, and it's really well deserved. They've been absolutely amazing, and I think this is gonna be a dynasty. I think I know teams don't repeat. They may not repeat, but I could see them winning three in the next 5 or 6 years
Yeah,
because they've got one of the top two players in the league. They've got some good young talent. They've got a deep roster, and they've got so many draft picks to just keep adding to this
yeah.
pool. So yeah, it's scary for other teams in the West, which is a funny one to say because the West is much more competitive, but they just seem a level above everybody else.
Yeah, I don't see. I agree with you. I think it is a dynasty now, and it is the draft picks they have. If they can use those right, even to not even always go and draft, if they can use them to bring in someone to kind of like complement Shea if he needs to sit out a couple
Yeah,
of games or something like that as well. Like they've so many options and so many moving parts now that they could do what that Warriors team did when the likes of Klay Thompson and Steph Curry were coming through, and I think they could emulate that and maybe go one better as well.
yeah, I honestly think it could go to that level because it's been crazily good, and I think you make an interesting point about trading that as well. Another thing is how many good young guys they have. Like we talked about rotation players,
Mm,
like the likes of Cason Wallace would probably play 30 minutes somewhere else. Kenrich Williams would
yeah,
probably start or at least be a rotation piece in another playoff team. So these guys are people that if you have them, and you trade them away before their contract is up or before they need an extension, then you can get a lot back for them because they are very valuable. So, I think we might see Lou Dort maybe moved on soon too, because if they do have to pay J-Dub and Chet, it's going to be difficult to continue to pay him. So that might be one, but we'll see. We'll see in the next few years. It's going to be really interesting, but yeah, so impressed with them. If you don't have anything else, we'll move on to our transfer roundup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll let you go ahead first because one of the big ones, obviously, maybe we'll do two of the big ones, both from Leverkusen to Liverpool. One is nailed on pretty much with Jeremy Frimpong, and then the other one, Florian Wirtz, seems to be well on the cards.
Yeah, I think the Frimpong one, as I was just kind of mentioning passing there when we were talking about PSG, I think it looks like bringing in Frimpong, maybe Kirk as well, looks to be on the way too for around 45 million. Bringing in the two of them to bring you to be your new fullbacks looks to be a shift towards what PSG did to Liverpool with Hakimi and Nuno Mendes just bombing on, and you're playing with kind of two at the back or one of your centre mids drops in, and then you have Vert filling in that number 10 role behind, hopefully a new striker, but
Yeah,
the start that Liverpool have done to this summer, if these three deals go through by the start of June, which they look like they might, that gives you all of June, all of July to kind of just get a centre back and a striker in and get the others out the door.
yeah.
I think it's incredible. And Richard Hughes and the rest of them deserve a lot of credit if they get these three done quickly.
Yeah, I think it's massive to, like you said, the speed of it is so big. Like, and I think the price as well, obviously, that was what was in the Frimpong contract, that was its release clause. But I said to you at the time, like, I couldn't believe how low it was. Obviously, I didn't expect him to be as good when they signed him. But, like, his years there now, and you think he would have a bigger release clause at this stage. 35 million euros is nothing for his talent.
Yeah,
Looking at his last 3 years in the Bundesliga, like, 9 goals and 10 assists. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 14 goals and 10 assists. Last year, 5 goals and 9 assists. Like this is from a fullback, as you said.
yeah,
So
it's silly. 14
yeah,
goals is ridiculous from a right back.
yeah,
I know he's a
and that
right wing back. He was basically a right winger, but he was still kind of tracking up and back to score 14 goals. And
yeah,
Gamaldo at the other side was kind of doing the same from left back. That was
yeah,
where they got their title was won from their fullback scoring goals. And if Arnie's trying to
yeah.
do that, then more power to him because I think it'll be incredibly exciting to watch him going up and down outside Salah.
Yeah, it's a little more easy to do that when you have three at the back and
Three,
one
exactly,
full
yeah.
back is one wing back is crossing to the other one. But
Yeah,
you never know what could happen. But like looking at Vertz's stats as well, like last year, 16 goals, 14 assists, and then the year before when they won the league, 18 goals and 19 assists. These are all in all competitions, these stats. But yeah, there's a reason why it's been reported by David Ornstein that he'll be the most expensive German player ever, and probably
yeah.
a record for Liverpool, a club record fee, which is absolute
It'll surely be a
madness.
record, Premier League record as well, with the numbers being called. It'll
Yeah,
surely be more than what Chelsea paid for Enzo and Caicedo.
how much is being thrown
It's
around at the
looking at
moment?
in around 135 million euros. So
Wow,
whatever that works out at. So 150 million pounds maybe, or
it's
madness either
less
way
in
anyway. Oh, it's less there,
less in
yeah.
pounds.
120 million pounds, sorry.
Yeah. I'll
Which
look at it
is
now quickly, but I think it's the fee is crazy. Yeah, so hopefully, hopefully it works out. But I don't see,
yeah,
yeah, 115 million just
yeah.
thereabouts in
So
pounds, which
in
is
around the Caicedo money.
wow, it's mad.
Yeah.
But yeah, two massive deals to get over the line, and obviously if Kirkes comes in too, that's huge. But we'll get onto that one, I suppose, when that is
When it
more solid.
happens.
These two seems are pretty much done and dusted. It seems like obviously Frimpong is in the door, but the Verts one is pretty much 1.5 feet in the door. I think.
Yeah, I think so too, yeah.
A big one that just came in today is Liam Delap deciding to go to Chelsea. So obviously we're looking at a lot of young players moving. Obviously Wirtz is 22, Frimpong 24, Delap is 22 as well himself. 30 million pound release clause since Ipswich got relegated. Decided to go to Chelsea. I think is because of the European football that they got
Yeah,
from finishing in the Champions League spots. Last year in the Prem, 12 goals, 2 assists. They didn't use him a whole lot towards the end of the season. Sorry, that's in all comps, but I kind of feel like they towards the end, I think they knew they were going to have to sell him and they'd
yeah.
get a good fee for him, so they didn't want to risk him. But what do you make of this move?
Like I think it makes a load of sense for Chelsea because like Nicholas Jackson for me isn't the answer. I think we've said this a couple of times now. I don't think he is very good. I think he plays a
Look
really
what he
good
did
role for
last night.
Chelsea. I know
That
that's the
ball, he
conference
just
league.
ran straight to
Yeah,
the keeper. Like,
yeah. He's just like I just don't think he's very good, and I think Delap is very good. So I can see why Chelsea want him, but I
yeah,
just can't get my head around why so many players want to go to Chelsea.
No.
Like it doesn't make sense to me. It just feels like career suicide. The amount of players they've signed over the last 2 years are they're
Yeah.
already look like they're on the way out. The likes of Felix is out. Mudryk is out the door. I know he's banned at the moment, but he'll be out the door. Like Pedro Neto, there's talks of him moving on now as well. I just don't understand why lads are going there for a year, signing 8 year contracts and making it so difficult to get themselves out the door again if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But I just said it is the Premier League football. But if he was more open minded and went to somewhere that might be in Europa League this year, and then
Yeah.
kind of they push on next year. If he went to like a Villa or a Newcastle or a United, God forbid, like there's things that there's better options out there than Chelsea. Maybe United's not a better option than Chelsea right now, but if you're looking long term, it probably will
Yeah.
be again at some stage. Like so,
Yeah. Possibly.
I don't know. It's a really strange one for me.
I think it's yeah, it doesn't make sense for him. I think for Chelsea, yeah, I don't know why they keep signing more and more players. Obviously, they do need a striker, and I agree with you about Jackson. I wasn't talking about looking at his two goals. I was talking about look at when he was through on goal last night,
Yeah,
and he just gave the ball straight to the keeper for no
yeah.
reason. Just shocking touch. I know he scored twice, so Chelsea fans, don't get too annoyed, but like he's just not good enough. And something like that kind of shows it, as you said, Conference League level. But I think for Chelsea they need a striker. But I kind of said to you about United not getting him, and I think this could apply for Chelsea too. You don't need another work in progress. Like you need
Mm,
a player who can actually score goals consistently at a high level. And I think United missing out on him, while it may some United fans, I think they really wanted it because 30 million, a good market opportunity, a good physical young player. But he could come to United and be under serious pressure and not score for 10 games.
yeah,
And
exactly.
the same
And
thing could
end up
happen
like
at Chelsea.
Hoyland. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just you're just getting abuse from the fans, online stuff like that for a young guy. You don't really want that. So I think a Newcastle or maybe a Villa would have been a much better option for him, or even a step up to the likes of Crystal Palace would have been a bit more
Mm,
sensible because they're in the Europa League and just establish yourself. But obviously, there's so much hype around some of these young English guys that he had to go to a big team. I think one then that United did get in the door. It seems like it's not fully done. Obviously, similar to the Frimpong situation, just need to sign on the dotted line and get the
yeah.
medical done and all that stuff. But Mateus Cunha coming for £62.5 million. That was his release clause from Wolves, which I think is a good price for how good he was in the last couple of years in the Premier League. And I think United can pay it over 2 or 3 years, which will help with the financial situation. 17 goals and 6 assists in all comps last year, 14 goals and 8 assists in all comps the year before. Really solid player. Fits into kind of any system. Definitely fits into the three at the back system as one of the tens. Kind of explosive. The type of, I think, dynamism that United need, because if they fail to get like a proper striker that can guarantee goals, if you did have him and there's a lot of talk about Mbumo at the moment, we'll see what happens with that. But if you had the two of them behind a striker, you might not worry as much about the amount of goals the striker gets. What did you think of this one? Do you think it's a good one for United?
I think he's a good player, and I do think it's good move. But I think the issue could be that he is quite hot-headed as well, and it's
Hmm.
another hot-headed lad coming into a team of hotheads. And I don't know, like there has to be a point where they get there so hot that it's a volcano and it all erupts. Now it might be
Yeah,
him, it might be okay. I think it's a risky one, but if he just continues playing the football he played last season and kind of keeps his head on straight and doesn't rob glasses off coach on the
yeah.
sideline and stuff like that, then
Oh
I
lord.
think I do think he's a really, really good player. And I think 62.5 million for the kind of player he is at his age as well is it's really good business. And I
Yeah,
think there's a lot of players who'll be going for release clauses this summer. I think a lot of teams are going to be looking at release clause players and not kind of getting into bidding wars over the likes of Gyökeres or Sesko. Just like, oh, he's a 62.5 million release clause. Let's
yeah.
just pay it now before someone else
It's
comes
cut and
along and
dry,
tries to
like.
take him out. Yeah, 100%. That's all you have to do is just say, okay, here's the money. Do you want this? Yeah, okay, here's the club, 62.5
Yeah,
million.
and if he's happy to go there, then that's it. Job done.
Exactly, and you don't want to get into a big war with Arsenal over Sesco or Barcelona over Marcus Rashford, for example. So like you just don't want things like that to happen. And I think it's a good decision made, grand and early, but they need to stop playing football matches and just let the season
Oh my
die.
god. I
They
know, like the
just like
lads
it
don't want to be there at all. They're not trying.
clearly,
They're just rotating the whole team, playing all young lads. Like that's what the
yeah,
preseason is for. It's just a money grab. I think they make like
yeah.
£8 million off this, which obviously they 100% need it after missing out on
Mm.
European football. So look, that's another conversation altogether. But I'm happy with the deal as a United fan. I think it's a good one. And I think I like the fact that he's like so confident and he wants apparently the number 10 shirt and some of the things he said already about winning trophies and stuff. But you like to hear that. And there was an interesting one on Talk of the Devils, the Athletics Man United podcast. They had the Wolves correspondent for the Athletic on, and he made some interesting points because they said similar things about him being hot headed to him, like kind of asking, is this something that had happened before? Like, was this in his personality? And he said it was very strange because it never happened before this season. And then all of a sudden, he just kind of came out of nowhere and just kind of lost the head a lot. And
Yeah,
two times, obviously. And that's not a one time occasion. Then you can say, look, there's a trend here.
a
But
pattern.
he
Yeah,
did say that previous years, there was none of that and they all thought, he's very well liked. He's very like kind, polite, stuff like that. But he did say that he can go on and just like sometimes the thing with him is he might randomly like tweet something out and then the next day he deletes it or something and it's gone and you're like, what did he mean by whatever he said? And that's something if you're at United, it's going to come under massive scrutiny. So it's all going to be things to watch. If I suppose it feeds more into the media circus around United, they'll absolutely lap it up if he does lose the head. So
of course.
yeah, let's hope that doesn't happen. But this is going to be our new feature instead of Gan Seans going forward. We're going to do like a little transfer roundup of things that are about to happen or that are seem to be on the way. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Um, but obviously, Shane, as we mentioned last week, one Gan Seans. It's officially official now. So congrats to you, and I'll have to come for my revenge next season.
Yeah, we'll see.
So moving on to our next sport, we've got the NFL. So, you know, right at this moment where there was rookie training camps, mini camp over the last couple of weeks, and now we're into like OTAs mostly or like voluntary. But voluntary, a lot of coaches want their main guys there. They don't
Yeah.
want them to be doing the Stefan Diggs and be off on a yacht with Cardi B and passing around some alleged unidentified type of powder that nobody has fully confirmed what it is, but Mike Vrabel does not
Mm.
seem to be happy about it. So yeah, most people do want their players to be there, and I think we're looking at some of the guys who it's going to be big seasons for them, or they're big talking points, and we've picked one each. So I'll let you go ahead with yours first.
Yeah, I just want to give just talk very kind of briefly about Breece Hall and the difference he can make to the Jets this year because obviously last year he was poor, the team was poor, but a new head coach now, a new quarterback in. I think if he's going to step up, then it has to be this year. And I think if he does step up to the player we all kind of thought he was at the end of year one, then I can see the Jets finally getting over that playoff bar and run and finally making one. So unfortunately, last year he was only averaging 4.2 yards per carry and only five touchdowns, which for a player of his apparent talent it's not good enough for like especially if you want to be a number one running back. And I
Yeah,
think having a quarterback like Justin Fields this year who can run as well to kind of take a bit of pressure off him, take some of the yards off him if needed, and just kind of take some of the eyes away from him if he uses this correctly, he could have a massive year. Could get closer to the numbers of the duo at Lions,
yeah,
if he needed to. Like there, Jameer Gibbs was the one I was thinking of. Just took me a second to get the name there. He could get anywhere near Jameer Gibbs levels of kind of beating defenders and running touchdowns. Then it could be a good year for the Jets. But
well,
it
yeah. If
is
he could
also
get
the
to that
Jets.
level, it'd be unbelievable.
Yeah, not even to that level, but if he kind of got, if he added 50% to what he was doing last year, then I'd be
Yeah,
more than happy with this.
yeah. I made the mistake last year of drafting him and Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so that kind of was a bit of a mistake I won't be making again in my fantasy draft. But like you said, his first season, like he only played 7 games, but he had 5.8 yards per carry, like 66 yards per game in those 7 games. It showed a lot of explosive ability and stuff like that. Then in his second year, yeah, his yards per carry went down closer to what he had last year, and per game closer to what he had last year. But he was a more of a threat, I think, through the air as well in the passing
Yeah.
game, which is something we saw. And then you're like, okay, combine those two, be a bit more explosive on the ground, keep the passing game going. But it really didn't work out like that for multiple reasons with what was going on with the Jets last
Mm.
year. But I think is interesting. I was reading on ESPN from a week ago. Aaron Glenn wants to employ a committee approach.
Yeah,
Obviously, we talked about that, but I think it was really interesting that he mentioned having Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis as like a kind of a three back committee. A quote from him was he said, I think mentally Hall is in a good place, but I would say that we have three running backs on this team and we're going to utilize them as much as possible. So I think that's an interesting one. What's your feeling about maybe him kind of shouldering a bit less of the load and how that might work out?
I think even if you're going with a three-pronged attack of running backs, you still need to have a lead one. So
Yeah,
like there's so
100%.
you're not giving it a 33, 33, 33 split. Like it's going to be maybe like 50 and then two 25s or 40, 30, 30, whatever. Like you still need one to be your lead running back. And I think Breece Hall has got to do everything in his power to be that lead running back because like Brendan Allen is quite a big lad as well. So like he doesn't have that explosive pace. He's not a Derrick Henry by any stretch of the imagination. Like so I think Breece Hall needs to kind of step up this offseason and show he can be the one that you need 3 yards on a 4th and 3 that put me in there, I'll get him.
Yeah,
He needs to show he can be the one that can be trusted. And then the other two can do the dog's work. They can get their 1 yard touchdown runs from in front of the line and stuff. But I think Breece Hall
yeah.
needs to be the number one man he thinks he is this season coming.
Yeah, I think if Glenn handles the situation well, I think it could work that, if there is a bit of dirty work that needs to be done, he splits it between the other two guys. And then if Hall is feeling it, if he's confident in a game, if he's working, just keep running him and give him like 90% of the snaps in that game if he feels like he's able and get him in that way. Because I know he said he thinks mentally he's in a good place. I think it's a bit strange to even mention like the mental aspect of it. Obviously, there were maybe some concerns that way, so maybe ease him in if he's feeling in any way like things aren't fully right for him. I think going with an extra couple of backs to kind of help him will definitely work. I thought it was interesting actually when I just initially started researching when you said you were going to talk about Breece Hall. I said I'll just throw his name into Google and click on the news section to see what's out there. And there's so much like from obviously they're not very reputable sources, but there's so
Mm.
many things that people like saying about trades, multiple teams looking to trade for him. Do you think that's a possibility at all?
I think that would be silly to do because you're leaving yourself down with kind of two who are still they're very raw. Braylon Allen showed last year he's very, very raw. You need
Yeah,
someone who can just kind of lead, and if you're going to trade him away, I don't see the point in all the effort you put into him for the last 3 years, getting him over the injury he had, the Achilles injury, getting him over that to bring him back, and then sorry, he tore his ACL, he didn't have his Achilles, sorry. Getting him over that injury, bringing him back in, easing him back in the year before, and then throwing him back in last year, then trading him away for someone else to reap the benefit of him, I think would be ridiculous.
yeah, I think it's not the time now. I think if this year goes badly and they trade him for like, something big in terms of like a good pick in the draft that they can use or they like somebody in the draft next year and they move on that way. But like I think you need to give yourself at least another year, like you said, after coming back from a big injury. He needs a couple of years. He's still very young. I think it would be a bad idea to do it right
Yeah, I
now.
think so too.
And I think that's just probably hope from other probably outlets that
Other
a
sources,
certain
yeah.
person follows that team and they think, oh yeah, I'm going to report that. I would like him to come, but
Mm.
there's not a lot to some of these. But moving on then to my topic, I thought an interesting one is looking at the Colts quarterback situation, which is like being like they're kind of up the creek with two broken paddles right now.
Mhm.
They're in an awful situation after last year, and they've got Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones to fight it out for the number one spot. Like to me, it's just it doesn't make sense. And some of the stuff I'm hearing as well is like, oh, Daniel Jones is going to be the starting QB. Oh, Richardson, he's going to have to beat him out because Jones can work in this system and blah blah blah. Listen, I've been hearing the same thing for years, like about him at the Giants, and
Yeah.
the honest thing is he's not the worst quarterback, but he just can't stay fit. And when he is fit, he's not reliable because he's constantly in his head worried about getting sacked because
Yeah.
of the injuries he's had before.
But
And that
he's
may be
also sorry,
sorry, go ahead. No, no,
he's
go ahead.
always he's also always playing his way back from injury. Like
Yeah,
you never have 100% Daniel Jones. He's missed the 5 games. He's back in for this one. He's throwing ridiculous balls because he's not match fit, for want of a better way of putting this, and then gets injured again, and just repeat that cycle. You never get a 100% fit Daniel Jones, and putting any player in there who's not 100% fit, it leads to problems, and it leads to errors, and it leads to teams losing games.
yeah, 100%. I think he's never one that you can fully rely on, and I think that might be down to the fact that the Giants O line was so bad the years he was there. It didn't really
Mm.
help him. But like he's supposed to be a threat on the ground, and just looking at his stats, he does have a presence about him. He can go forward. But from the last few years, like the last 3 seasons, so he had 16 games in 2022. That was his biggest season, the one when he got the big contract. He won. A playoff game for the Giants. That whole season, he had 243 rushing yards in the regular season. Then the next year he only played 6 games. He had 167, so way more per game.
Per
Then
game, yeah.
obviously he had the big injury. And then last year, 10 games, 172. But in that those couple of playoff games, he had 102 rushing yards in 2 playoff games that 2022 season. So yeah, there's that playoff season he did it, and then going into the next season he did it, but then he got injured because of not looking after himself properly when he's running into contact and different things that went on. And like looking at his other stats, then that if you wanted to point to that being an upside, well, that doesn't explain, that doesn't give you the right to say that's good enough for somebody who threw 8 touchdowns and 7 interceptions last season and 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions the year before.
Yeah.
Like that's not gonna cut it at all. But then you look at Anthony Richardson, and last year he had 8 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. So what do you really do here if you're the Colts? Like I think they probably do start Daniel Jones because Steichen seems to be very worried about Richardson and not fully believing in him. But once Jones inevitably does have a run of very bad games, Richardson comes in. What really does that help you? Because his confidence is completely shot at that point.
Yeah, it's just such a strange thing to do. Like I will never understand teams bringing in 2 quarterbacks to fight for a #1 jersey. Like the
Yeah,
Steelers did it last year, with Wilson and Fields, and Fields played the third
yeah,
year when Wilson was injured, and then straight away they dropped him,
yeah,
and his confidence was in the ground. It made absolutely no sense. And this is another version of that, only more exaggerated, because you've literally brought him in and told them, I don't know who we're starting. Like every single thing you hear, we don't know who our starter is going to be. Yes.
yeah,
Like you ended up with two not very good quarterbacks who are going to have no confidence. So a no confidence player is only going to get worse. But
yeah,
you're actually making their ceiling lower. Sorry, making their floor lower
yeah,
by pitting them up against each other. And I know they're not exactly throwing huge money at him. It's 14 million for the year for Daniel Jones, and Richardson's deal is 4 years, 34 million.
and his
But
rookie, yeah,
yeah, but like if you put that money to good use, like you trade out to and kept that kind of money in the bank, then go and get yourself someone who can actually throw a ball for you. I don't
mm,
understand what they're doing. I really don't get it. And as you said, Daniel Jones had a couple of bad games to bring in Richardson. What's Richardson going to do? Like he's going to have no confidence in himself. The team won't have any confidence in him. It looks like they were losing confidence in him towards the end of last year anyway. So
yeah.
I can't understand where this idea has come from, who thought of it, and how they ever thought it was going to be a good idea.
Yeah, and I think that to look then the positive about Richardson, I think, is his ability to run with the ball. Like the fact he has 11 games played last year with 499 rushing yards, that was something quite good. But then obviously the rest of the stats are pretty damning. The way he played in
Yeah.
general, less than 50% completion percentage, that's really not going to cut it at all. But like I think someone like him, we've mentioned confidence. I think you kind of have to stick with him if you're going to go with him. But they really don't seem like they're going to, and I think he'll be gone from there by the end of this year because they really don't seem confident in him at all.
Mm.
The way they moved with this Jones deal, and like looking, there's a report on Sports Illustrated today just mentioning that in their drills today, and their drills yesterday, Richardson took the first team reps in the first 2 segments, and Jones took them in the second half. And Shane Steichen said after that they may continue rotating in this method because each new day often carries a different team for the offense to work on. and they want both quarterbacks to be able to work on both. But like that's just another way of saying, like you said, you're both going for this. And you
Yeah,
saw what happened with the Steelers. I think in that situation it's slightly different because Wilson was always the number
always
one
going to be
guy,
the number one. Yeah.
and even though Fields was probably better at the start of the season in term compared to what Richardson or Wilson ultimately put out there, they still moved off him and they put Wilson in. I think this one is actually one where it could change just based on which guy plays better, but I really don't see Richardson being there long term.
And then what to do? Because they're not going to stick with Daniel Jones long term either, surely.
No.
So they're going to find a quarterback from the draft, and next year's quarterback class isn't very good. So
Well,
you
it
give
could
Daniel
it could be
Jones,
good if Archie Manning does come in, but that's another one that's up in the air as
yeah.
well.
But so then you give Daniel Jones another 1 year deal and another 14 million to get you to the year when Archie Manning is available the year after, and it's just
Yeah.
it's going around in a vicious cycle of nonsense, I think, and I just can't believe what they've left themselves into.
Yeah. I think there is some interest in quarterbacks in next year's draft outside of Manning. We'll be a bit more clear on that closer to the time, but always relying on the draft for something that may not work out because you might win one random game like the Giants did or like the Patriots have done a couple of times, like the Jets have done, and then you end up slipping down like 4 or 5 places, and then the guys you're actually interested in, you have to give up your whole future to get them.
Yeah, exactly. It's madness.
So yeah, I think it's a lot to bet on, and I think if they do go that way, which, okay, organizationally that might work out in the long run that, they get in a good young guy in next year's draft and he's really good and that's that. But for Shane Steichen, his job is on the line here. If things don't go well, they're going to boot him out because he made a mess of last year too. And coaches are playing for their jobs too, more than anything. So it's a really tricky situation over there, and I think it's one to watch as this season unfolds. It'll definitely be I really can't see it going well. I don't really see any way of this going well for them. But yeah, they're in a pretty easy division, so let's see. They might be able to pick up more wins than we expect, but to me, it's very doubtful.
Yeah, I agree.
So then we'll move on to our last segment. It's going to be our last power rankings of the season. So we're right now we've had the last week of Premier League, so we're gonna wrap it up with these, and we'll pick it up then again at the start of next season when the NFL is back up and running in the Premier League, and then the NBA will follow shortly after.
Mhm.
But last week I had mine was the Thunder in first, Palace second, Pacers, Spurs, Knicks, and Villa. So I'll give you guys my last one of the season now. I'm going with the Thunder to finish top to end the season. I think they're going to win the NBA championship. They just won the West. They're by far the best team. So much things we said earlier in the podcast all points the way they're top. And for me, in second then is Palace because of their run late in the season. The most points they've ever got in the Premier League, hitting over 50 for the first time and winning the first major trophy in their history. I think they had an unbelievable season and they're going to finish in second. The Pacers then in third, unbelievable first finals appearance it seems like since 2000. It's not nailed on yet. They still have to win one of the next three against the Knicks, but I think they're going to get that done. And that even either way, they've been so good this season. Finishing in third is a testament to how good Halliburton has been, how good they've been down the stretch. Then in fourth, Liverpool, Premier League winners. Excellent season, kind of cooled off towards the end when there was less to play for, but very good across the board and very impressive overall. Newcastle then fifth. I think getting into the Champions League again is massive for them, and they won the first trophy in like 69 or 70 years. So that's another one that played into for me. They had a great season and they're back into Europe, into the big leagues. And then last was Chelsea for me in sixth because they just won the Conference League, although it's an easy competition for them. It's silverware. They impressed me towards the end of the season. They did a lot better than I thought they would, getting into the Champions League spots and seeing out what they had to in the last few games. So that's my top six to end the season.
I think we went along the same lines because my six are the exact same, just in a different order. But I just went with the
Okay.
cup winners. I went with the two lads I think are going to be in the conference final or in the NBA finals and the cup winners. So my last week I had Palace, Spurs, Pacers, Man City, Thunder, and Villa. This week I have OKC, Pacers, Liverpool, Palace, Newcastle, Chelsea.
Okay.
So the exact same team as you. I just went with the cup winners that I thought deserved to be in there, and then the two teams are going to get to the NBA finals. And I think it makes sense that after the year of talking about it, we were eventually going to come to a point where we had all six teams the same. So it's good that it's the
Yeah.
last one.
Yeah, that is actually mad. I didn't think about that. We're on the last week after 20 episodes. We've gone for all the same teams, so
Yeah.
that's pretty cool to end the season like that. Let's see how it goes when we pick up. I think an idea that I had that we might run. We'll see what you guys think. If you have any feedback on it or anything like that, what would you think if we did like say for the rest of the summer we did each week a power rankings on different things, like say the best wide receivers in the NFC power rankings, like top six, or then like the teams that have had the most surprising Premier League seasons in last year, or like certain like random things that could be like the best game of the NFL last year. We power rank like six or something like that. Might be an interesting one to get some guys, some people suggesting and stuff.
Opinions. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, so there we go. Bit of planning on the fly there for you, live on air. Episode 20. We're bringing the planning to you and everything. But this week's episode a little bit shorter. If you don't have anything else, Shane, will we wrap it?
Yeah, we'll leave it there. Again, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and we'll be back to you next week.
Yeah, nice one, lads. As I said at the top, all the subscriptions and likes and comments go a long way. And thanks for listening to us across 20 episodes if you have done, and we'll be back for many more. So talk to you later, lads.
Look, lads.